feel a rant coming on. Am I allowed to rant? Is that okay? Keep it professional. Hello. Well, since Adobe introduced their AI-driven denoise function to Lightroom, I've noticed a lot of activity on YouTube with people covering the new Lightroom function and comparing AI noise reduction systems. This got me thinking, are we in danger of going too far with all of this? And what do we risk losing? Well, I learned photography in the pre-digital age using film and then developing and printing in a darkroom. And oh my goodness, I can still smell those chemicals. There was just something so kind of genuinely real about the whole process. I think because it was so hands-on. And I grew up with the ever-present feature of grain in photographs. It was and remains to me now a natural feature of a photograph to have grain in it. It's really what makes it for me. It was when I switched to digital photography that I came across this concept of noise. And initially, I thought it was just a digital term for grain, and therefore I was never really too fussed about it. Eventually though, I came to realise that grain and noise are not exactly the same thing. There are similarities in how they appear, but also important differences. So let me explain. And let's start with film, which is where I began. When an exposure is made on film, the light reflected off the subject is captured on a frame of film. The film's surface consists of crystals of typically silver halide, which are excited by the light and then change their structure to create the grain that will give rise to the photograph. The less light sensitive the film, i.e. the slower the ISO, or in my day ASA, as I used to know it, there's much finer crystals and the more tightly packed they are than films that are faster, where the crystals are bigger, resulting in a coarser and bigger grain. So grain is an inherent part of how the photographic image is made on film and is therefore essential to having any kind of image. The more light sensitive the film, the higher the ISO, the grainier the result. Still true in digital photography. But this only went as far as producing the negative. We then had to project the image from the negative onto photographic paper to produce the final positive print. Again, this is a chemical process, and the papers came in various degrees of sensitivity as well as the film did, and once again used kind of chemical salts to form the final image. And also true here, the more light sensitive the paper, the grainier the result. With digital photography, the image is created when light reflected from the subject is captured on the camera sensor. This is an electronic system, and as we know, the ISO can be adjusted from frame to frame, which is a big bonus. Whereas in the days of film, you were stuck with your ISO for 30 odd frames. Photons hitting the sensor generate electrons, which are stored in sensor pixels, then converted into a digital signal, which is displayed as an image. Pixels, therefore, are the building blocks of digital images in the way that grain is the building block of a film image. It's therefore more accurate to equate grain to pixels than to equate grain to noise. So, what is noise in digital photography? I think it's best to think of it as randomness caused by the sensor producing imperfections through pixels not being able to accurately process what they're receiving. There can be more than one cause, but the main one is increased ISO, resulting in increased noise. ISO doesn't affect the exposure. That's a function of shutter speed or exposure time and aperture. Of course, increasing the ISO increases the light sensitivity of the sensor, and that allows you more scope with the other functions of shutter speed and aperture. Increasing the ISO pushes the sensor to work harder, and sometimes it can't cope with what's being thrown at it, and consequently some pixels create this kind of randomness which we then see as noise. And that noise tends to show up in two ways: luminance and colour. Luminance noise affects the brightness that pixels are trying to display, and colour affects the pixel's ability to capture colour in an accurate way. That's why in the Detail tab of Lightroom's Develop module, we find controls for luminance and colour in the noise reduction function. Noise, therefore, in my kind of non-scientific thinking, is really random pixel creation, which I can understand we want to reduce where it might spoil the look of the image, and I guess random colour is probably more of a grievance there than luminance. One of the things we lose in this process of noise reduction is sharpness, and if we're not careful we can end up with a clean but unsharp image, which isn't really desirable. So, as with almost everything in photography, this business of noise reduction is a compromise, and we're aiming for the best compromise that we can achieve. And this is where my suspicion of AI generated noise reduction comes in. And it's also interesting to note that under the Effects tab on Lightroom's Develop module, there is a function for adding grain. Yes, there is. Have a look. Clearly, those clever people at Adobe recognise the difference between noise and grain and have given us digital photographers the capacity to introduce grain as a deliberate effect. And I'm really pleased about that. My worry about the AI element of all of this is, how does it make any kind of aesthetic judgment on what simply looks right? Recently, I was in the TV department of a large store and was looking at the images on some of the latest ultra high-res TV screens, and I felt somewhat uneasy about what I was seeing. I was wondering what it was that was troubling me until I looked away from the screen and compared it to reality. The images, they were just a bit too bright and crisp, to the point that, in my view, they no longer reflected reality. What I was seeing on the screen seemed sharper than what I was looking at in the room. Everything was just too clear, and reality isn't like that. I'm sure you must have been in a room and seen shafts of sunlight coming in through a window, revealing all manner of dust, pollen, and whatever else floating in the air. That's what we look through all of the time. We're mostly unaware of it. And images that are so clear and bright, I feel, haven't looked through normal air, if you get my drift. So I think my plea is that we shouldn't obsess too much about noise in our images, and remember that grain is a good thing, helping us to create texture in our images. So let me leave you with a story of my grandpa. I remember when I was fairly young him getting a new upper set of false teeth and proudly smiling to show me this new set of teeth that he'd got. And I noticed a small corner edge of one of the two front teeth was missing, and he'd deliberately broken it off with fine-nosed pliers in order to make them look, in his words, more realistic. Reality contains flaws. That's what makes things feel real. My fear is that artificial intelligence will result in flawless results, which will then simply look artificial. As Leonard Cohen so eloquently put it in his song entitled Anthem, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So, let's hear it for grain in photos. Well, thanks again for watching. Please feel free to comment below whether you agree, disagree, or have a totally different opinion. I really don't mind. But like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all of which helps the channel and really encourages me. And I'll see you in the next one.